Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Catalina. Good morning, Jens. Good morning, Bante. Good morning, Cam. Hello, Livan. So Bante is setting up a few things. We're running a little bit late this morning, so thank you for the patience. Does everyone have a copy of the sutra that we're going to be studying today?
I'm ready to go whenever.
It's,
Okay.
I guess.
Okay. So during the first half of the Ariṭṭha Sutta, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so today we'll be looking at the Ariṭṭha Sutta. We start by paying homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So there's a number of discourses in the suttas where the Buddha speaks about mindfulness of breathing. And when he gives a detailed explanation of mindfulness of breathing, he uses the same 16-step approach, the same 16-step system of mindfulness of breathing, Anapanassati. And we see the same 16 steps in many different places. So the one that's the most well-known is called the Anapanassati Sutta. But the sutta that I prefer to use when speaking about mindfulness of breathing is the Ariṭṭha Sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 54, which is the Ānāpānassati, which is a whole collection of discourses specifically about mindfulness of breathing. And it's Sutta number 6 from that section, the Ariṭṭha Sutta. And there's a couple of reasons that I like to use this sutta when talking about mindfulness of breathing. One is that it's quite a bit shorter than the Ānāpānassati Sutta. It's also the introductory section is more concise, it's more to the point. And also the way the Buddha introduces the 16-step system is quite relevant to many people. So I've been told that the plan is we're going to do the first half of the sutta today, and then I'll lead in a period of guided meditation at the end. And then we'll do the second half tomorrow. And again, I'll give guided meditation on that portion of the instructions then. So beginning with the sutta, at Savatthi. There the Blessed One said, "Monks, do you practice mindfulness of breathing?" When this was said, Venerable Ariṭṭha said to the Blessed One, "Bhante, I practice mindfulness of breathing." And the Buddha asks him, "Ariṭṭha, how do you practice mindfulness of breathing?" And Ariṭṭha replies, "Bhante, when I have abandoned interest in sensuality related to the past, when I am free of interest in sensuality related to the future, and when I have thoroughly removed aversive perceptions towards both internal and external phenomena, I inhale mindfully and I exhale mindfully. Bhante, that is how I practice mindfulness of breathing." So at this point, most of us are probably thinking, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. In fact, those of us who practice mindfulness of breathing, which is mostly not me, by the way, might even be thinking, oh, that's how I do it too. That's my approach to mindfulness of breathing as well. Or some of us might actually be thinking, wow, that's substantially more advanced than how I do mindfulness of breathing. But for the Buddha, this is not sufficient. So then the Buddha says, "Ariṭṭha, that is mindfulness of breathing. I do not say that it is not. However, Ariṭṭha, there is a detailed, complete practice of mindfulness of breathing. Listen to this and carefully pay attention. I will speak. So I am going to speak first a little bit about what Ariṭṭha said, because Ariṭṭha actually said some very good statements here. He made some excellent points about Dhamma practice. So first off, he says, when I have abandoned interest in sensuality related to the past. So interest in sensuality is kama chanda, so the first of the 5 hindrances, and one that's particularly relevant to our meditation practice. Because as long as we're interested in any kind of sensual experiences, then it's going to be extremely difficult to focus on our meditation practice. It's also very relevant because interest in sensuality arises from desire and delusion. In particular, the delusion that getting the objects of our desire will make us happy. And the delusion that pursuing the objects of our desire is a worthwhile pursuit. So that's fueling the cause of dukkha. And it is itself a cause of dukkha. So abandoning interest in sensuality related to the past is a great way to start. So letting go of any desire for anything that we've experienced before, not fixating on memories of pleasant times that we've had or pleasant things that we've experienced. So letting go of any interest in sensuality related to the past. And he says, I am free of interest in sensuality related to the future. So similarly, recognizing that there is a lot of opportunities in the future for having sensual experiences. And for most of us, this is probably where we tend to get a little more caught up, is thinking about what we might do in the future. So interest or desire for sensual experiences in the future. So similarly, letting go of any tendency towards thinking about sensual experiences that we might have in the future. And then Ariṭṭha says, and when I have thoroughly removed aversive perceptions towards both internal and external phenomena. So in other words, he's not resisting anything, either inside or outside. So internal phenomena would mean things inside his body or inside his mind. External phenomena would mean things outside his body and mind. So sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So things external to us. So basically whatever's happening, whether it's inside or outside, he's not bothered by it. He doesn't resist it. He doesn't dislike it. He doesn't reject it. He just recognizes this is what's happening, but he's not bothered by it. He chooses not to produce aversion or hostility towards the sensations and experiences that are happening. And he says he inhales mindfully and he exhales mindfully. And I think this is the point where the Buddha is a little bit underwhelmed by Ariṭṭha's explanation. So it's not the preparation part. So the preparation that Ariṭṭha speaks about is actually pretty good. But it's the fact that all he's doing is just inhaling and exhaling mindfully. That's where the Buddha sees incompleteness. Since, once again, the Buddha is giving a 16-step approach, not a one-step approach. So then the Buddha continues. The Buddha says, Ariṭṭha, what is the detailed, complete practice of mindfulness of breathing? Here, Ariṭṭha, a monk who has gone to the wilderness or to the foot of a tree or to an empty building, sits down, crosses his legs, holds his body upright, and establishes mindfulness. He inhales mindfully and he exhales mindfully. So this is not the first step. This is just setting up to get started. So here, first off, the Buddha emphasizes where we go to meditate. So going to the wilderness or to the foot of a tree or to an empty building. So the idea here is finding a peaceful place. where there's not a lot of distraction, there's not much that might impinge on our efforts to practice meditation. So going to the wilderness or to the foot of a tree are very standard classic places to meditate. In the history of Buddhism, it's been very common for particularly monastics to go outside of towns and villages, or to go to places which are in natural environments where there's not a lot of people around, and to use that peaceful environment as a place of practice. Or he gives the example of going to an empty building. So going somewhere where, again, there's nobody there who will distract our meditation. So these are ideal locations, but actually we can practice meditation anywhere. So some people are living with their children, or they're living with their partner, or they're living with roommates. And in those situations, then you just have to accept that there's going to be a certain amount of distraction, and choose to not be distracted by it. Choose to not be bothered by it, but just recognize that this is part of our environment. So if you go to the forest, then you've got the sound of the birds and the sound of the wind and the sound of the deer and the touch of the mosquitoes and all the other wonderful denizens of the forest. Sitting in your home, you might have the sound of your children and the sound of your phone and the sound of somebody digging in the refrigerator and the touch of your cat climbing on your back or whatever it is. But, well, you just have to learn how to put up with that as well, to not be bothered by it, to not make it a problem. So then the Buddha begins the 16-step mindfulness of breathing. Again, as mentioned, I'll go through the first 8 steps. I'll explain the first 8 steps, and then we'll do a bit of meditation practice together. And that will be our program this morning. So it starts off with the Buddha giving the explanation of the introductory to mindfulness of breathing. So getting started with the practice. He says, inhaling a long breath, one knows I am inhaling a long breath. Exhaling a long breath, one knows I am exhaling a long breath. Inhaling a short breath, one knows I am inhaling a short breath. Exhaling a short breath, one knows I am exhaling a short breath. So this is the stage of knowing. So at this point, we're not trying to cultivate any particular attitude towards the breath or any particular perception of the breath. We're not trying to change the experience at all. So we're not trying to make our breathing long or slow. We're not trying to make it fast or slow. We're not trying to make it shallow or deep. We're just aware of it, however it is. So this is the stage just of mindfulness, just of awareness. So we're aware of the breath, however it is. So some people interpret this to mean that we should start by doing long, slow, deep breaths and then switch to doing short, fast, shallow breaths. But I really don't think that's what the Buddha is talking about. If it was, then the Buddha would have actually said, one trains, I will exhale a short breath. One trains, I will inhale a short breath, and so on. But that's not what he says. He simply says, when one is inhaling a long breath, one knows I am inhaling a long breath. So later on, so starting after this section, the Buddha instead switches from saying one knows to saying one trains. So that indicates that there's a difference here. For these first 2 steps, so inhaling and exhaling a long breath, inhaling and exhaling a short breath, one is not trying to do anything in particular. One is just trying to know the experience, to be aware of the experience. And it's worth noting here that the Buddha does not say any particular place where you should focus your attention. He doesn't talk about focusing on the tip of your nose or focusing on your abdomen or any of the other instructions that one commonly hears from contemporary meditation teachers. He simply says, when you're breathing, know that you're breathing. So, very simple instruction. Do you know that you're breathing? Can you feel your breathing? Well, then you can practice these first few steps, these first two elements of mindfulness of breathing. The next one that he gives, one trains, I will inhale experiencing the whole body. One trains, I will exhale experiencing the whole body. So in Pali, that's sabba kaya patisangvedi. So sabba means whole or entire. Kaya means body. Patisangvedi means experiencing. Patisangvedi, it has the quality of completeness or thoroughness. So thoroughly and completely experiencing the whole body. So I interpret this exactly at face value. The Buddha's talking about experiencing your whole body. So from your toes to the crown of your head, the entire body. So feeling the whole body as you breathe, being aware of your entire physical body as you breathe. Similar to the instructions I was giving yesterday. So I was there speaking about focusing on your hands. And while focusing on your hands, you're still aware of the rest of your body. So similarly here, while breathing, while inhaling and exhaling, one is aware of the entire body. One is experiencing the entire physical body. So a popular way of explaining this, which is based upon the medieval commentaries from Sri Lanka, is to interpret this as meaning experiencing your whole breath. But I think this is not what the Buddha means, because that's already included under the previous step of knowing when you're breathing. Knowing a long breath, knowing a short breath, inhaling mindfully, exhaling mindfully, that already includes being aware of your whole, of the whole breath. So interpreting whole body as meaning the whole breath seems like a big step. It seems like a substantial rewriting of what the Buddha was saying here. So I take this to simply mean experiencing the whole body. So nothing special, nothing extra, just exactly what it looks like. So again, while inhaling and exhaling, one makes an effort to be clearly aware of the entire physical body. So not just the breathing process, not just the breath sensations, but the whole body. So that's step number 3. And step number 4, one trains, I will inhale calming physical activity. I will exhale calming physical activity. So the Pali here is pasambayang kaya sankhara. Pasambayang means calming or tranquilizing, settling down. So this is similar to the word passaddhi. So it's formulated slightly different, but it has a similar quality of bringing peacefulness and calmness and serenity to something. So pasambayang, kaya sankhara. So kaya again means body, so physical, related to the physical body. And sankhara. So sankhara is a very complex word with many shades of meaning and many usages in the Pali Canon. So the most ordinary usage of the word sankhara is to mean all objects, all distinct, separate things, whether physical or mental. So a sankhara is any object, any phenomenon, any conditional thing of any sort. And that includes both tangible objects, as well as thoughts and emotions, but also processes, activities, systems. Those all fit under sankhara. So sankhara literally means construct, something that's put together, something that's composed, something that's built up out of conditions and mm, components. So kaya sankhara means your physical components, your physical processes, your physical activities. So one simple way of taking this, I will inhale calming kaya sankhara. I will inhale calming physical activity, is bringing your body to complete stillness. So the first stage of this is actually just sitting completely still. This is a very important element of any kind of samadhi practice. But also when we practice vipassana, it's very helpful with practicing vipassana as well. But especially with samadhi practice, it's extremely important that we sit completely still. Every time we move the body, that tends to weaken our samadhi, tends to weaken our focus, our stillness of mind, our alertness of mind. So as we breathe in, use that experience of breathing in to calm down the body, to settle the body, to bring stillness and peacefulness to the body. And also similarly, the physical processes, allowing the physical processes to settle down, to calm down, to become quieter, more subtle, more peaceful. So one way of relating to this is through the breathing process, once again. So allowing the breath to become increasingly subtle and peaceful. You don't need to force this to happen. Just allow it to happen. It will happen naturally. So when we're not moving the body, when we're not moving the mind, when we're not agitating or stirring up our physical and mental experience, then naturally the body comes to deeper and deeper stillness, and the breath will become very gentle, very soft, very subtle. So while inhaling and exhaling, using that inhaling and exhaling as a calming effect on the body and mind, bringing the body and mind to stillness. By the way, for any kind of meditation that you're doing, this is also something that you can do if you notice that you're very agitated or you're very distracted or you're lost in a lot of thoughts. And this is something which Ajahn Chah would recommend, he said that any time that we're lost in thought during meditation, if we stop and do 3 long, slow, deep breaths, then by the time we get to the 3rd breath, we'll notice that the mind is much calmer. And whatever distraction or activity that we were lost in will likely have faded away, become, at the very least, become less of a problem. So again, the 4th step, I will inhale calming physical activity. I will exhale calming physical activity. Next, it says, one trains, I will inhale experiencing euphoria. I will exhale experiencing euphoria. So that's in Pali, that's piti, which you'll sometimes see translated as rapture or as pleasure. But these days I usually translate it as euphoria. And piti refers to the very pleasant physical sensation that arises in the body as our samadhi starts to grow. So as the mind becomes increasingly still, increasingly bright, increasingly unified, increasingly steady, then what tends to happen is that the body starts to feel very pleasant. The body starts to feel extremely good. So this feeling of ecstasy or euphoria flooding the whole body. So this is not a subtle sensation. This is not a mild sensation. It's a very intense electric pleasure all throughout the body. And this is something which once again will arise naturally as our samadhi grows, but it's also something that we can intentionally induce. It's something that we can intentionally strengthen. By directing the mind towards the cultivation of piti, towards the arising of euphoria, then it will arise. By directing the mind towards the strengthening and intensifying of euphoria, it will intensify. And we can use the breath as as a spur for driving that increase in the euphoria. So as we breathe in, intensifying this electric pleasantness all through the body. As we breathe out, intensifying this intense euphoria throughout the whole body. So just building it up, building it up, building it up, building it up. So as we inhale, building it up. As we exhale, building it up. As we inhale, building it up. As we exhale, building it up. So just keep magnifying and building up this feeling of euphoria all throughout the body with each breath. Kind of like when you're inflating a bicycle tire. So you've got your bicycle pump, and with every pump on the bicycle pump, then the wheel gets inflates a little bit more. So it's like that. Like every breath is like you're pumping up your euphoria a little bit more. The next step, he says, I will inhale, experiencing happiness. One trains, I will exhale, experiencing happiness. So what's translated here as happiness is sukha. And sukha here is, so it's often used in the Pali Canon to use, just in a general sense, any kind of pleasantness, any kind of happiness. The opposite of dukkha, which is any kind of unpleasantness. So sukha is any kind of pleasantness, any kind of happiness, any kind of pleasure. And in this case, it's coming right after euphoria, which is this very intense, electric, ecstatic kind of pleasantness throughout the body. And somewhat later in the suttas, we see the Buddha talking about gladdening the mind. So sukha here, its placing is a little bit odd, and there's a few different interpretations as to why it's at this location. One is that it's referring to a more subtle sense of happiness. So whereas piti is this very electric, intense, exciting kind of pleasantness all through the body, that sukha is this more subtle, peaceful kind of happiness, this more subtle, peaceful kind of pleasure. So it's sometimes translated as bliss, which is a perfectly fine translation, in my opinion. Nothing wrong with that. What's less clear is whether it's physical or mental. So it's sometimes said that piti is physical and sukha is mental. I'm not entirely convinced of that, particularly since the Buddha talks about mental gladness later on in these 16 steps. Seems a little bit unlikely that this point here is talking about a mental happiness. On the other hand, the immediately following step is about experiencing mental activity. So this does indicate that the Buddha is starting to shift from focusing on the body to focusing on the mind, to training the mind. So there might be some reason to interpret this as referring to a sense of subtle happiness in the mind. And actually, as our practice develops and as our samadhi and vipassana improve, then the distinction between body and mind become increasingly irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. body, mind, it's all the same. It's all just experience. We don't need to draw a sharp distinction between body and mind. So we draw an artificial distinction between the two sometimes because it can help to delineate our practice. It can help to show the edges of what it is we're focusing on with a particular practice. But we do so knowing that ultimately there are no hard lines between body and mind. There's no distinct separation between body and mind. So all that said, here, sukha, again, its most general meaning is simply happiness or pleasure. Its applied meaning here might mean specifically a more subtle, peaceful happiness than that of piti. So again, piti can be quite exciting, almost agitating, because of its intensity, its electric intensity. So one way of interpreting this then is that first one is cultivating piti, so this powerful electric euphoria all through the body. And then the next step, one trains, I will inhale experiencing happiness. One trains, I will exhale experiencing happiness. Is about settling down that intense pleasure. So transforming that intense, exciting, electric pleasure into a more subtle, peaceful pleasure. Again, noticing here though that the Buddha does take 2 steps, so steps 5 and 6 in the 16-step process, focused on producing this sense of pleasure. So feeling of physical pleasure and mental happiness are a very important element of Buddhist practice. And actively cultivating pleasantness and happiness in our meditation practice is a very important element of training the mind. Then the next step here, so step 7, the Buddha says, one trains, I will inhale experiencing mental activity. I will exhale experiencing mental activity. So here it's paying attention to the mind, and in particular, paying attention to the activities of mind. So the Pali here is chitta sankhara. So again, we have this word sankhara. So earlier we spoke about kaya sankhara, which is physical activities, physical movements, physical processes. So step 4 in the 16-step mindfulness of breathing, step 4 is about calming down the bodily activities. So here, step 7 is about experiencing mental activities, experiencing mental sankharas. So recognizing the thoughts, the emotions, the impulses, the tendencies, the movements of the mind. And those movements of mind, the coarser level are things like verbal thoughts and intense emotions. That's the coarser level. The subtler level of chitta sankhara are these, they're more like urges, like this tendency to move the mind in a particular way, kind of like the precursor to the arising of a thought, the seed of a thought rather than the thought itself. So these more subtle currents of mind. But subtle does not mean weak. These non-verbal currents of mind can be extremely strong. So don't underestimate them. So this step here is about bringing attention to chitta sankhara, to mental sankharas, mental activity, mental objects, being aware of the activity in the mind, whether it's coarse or subtle. So at this point in the process, you might not have a lot of coarse mental activity. Since at this point, hopefully one has developed some amount of samadhi through the preceding 6 steps. You may have already let go of the coarser, more clunky thoughts and emotions. But there will still be chitta sankharas of some kind. There will still be mental activities going on. So bring attention to them, recognize them, feel them. And then the eighth step is one trains, I will inhale calming mental activity. One trains, I will exhale calming mental activity. So this mirrors the fourth step. So the fourth step is calming physical activity, kaya sankara. And the eighth step here is calming mental activity, calming chitta sankara. So similarly, as we breathe in, calming the mind, settling down all of the activities and movements of mind, allowing the mind to come deeper and deeper to stillness. And as one exhales, calming and settling the mind, letting the mind move deeper and deeper into stillness. So I think that's enough explanation for now. So maybe now I'll lead us in a short guided meditation, just a few minutes, going through these first 8 steps. And of course, in a short period of meditation, we're not going to get a deep experience necessarily of these 8 steps, but we can at least start to get some feeling as to what it can be like to practice in this way. Then after that, we can go through any questions there are in the live chat. So go ahead and come to a comfortable upright position. Settling the body, rocking side to side a little bit to make sure it's well balanced. Rotating your shoulders back so they can relax. Making sure the head is balanced on top of the spine. Start by taking 2 or 3 long, slow, deep breaths. Then let the breath return to its natural rhythm, not controlling the breathing, not trying to make it be any particular way. Just paying full attention to the experience of breathing. Don't move the mind through the body. Just let the mind rest in the body. Let the mind rest in the body, feeling the body breathe. Whether it's a long breath or a short breath, we're just fully aware of the experience of breathing. And as we breathe in, we feel the whole body expanding with the breath, the whole body saturated with the breath. We're aware of the entire physical body, from the top of the head to the toes, just feeling the whole body as a single unified object, inflating and deflating, expanding and contracting. So as we breathe in, experiencing the whole body. As we breathe out, experiencing the whole body. As we breathe in, calming the body. As we breathe out, calming the body. So with each inhalation, soothing all the physical activities, soothing the physical movements, soothing the physical processes. As we exhale, relaxing the body, relaxing the activities of the body, letting go of any tension, any forcefulness, any movement within the body. So as we inhale, bringing stillness to the body. As we exhale, bringing stillness to the body. With each in-breath, bringing stillness and peace to the body. With each out-breath, bringing stillness and peace to the body. And as you feel your body still, peaceful, alert, you might notice a subtle feeling of pleasure, a subtle, pleasant feeling throughout the body. Feeling of warmth, satisfying, delightful, pleasant feeling in the body. It might be very weak, very subtle, very slight, but still notice it. Be aware of it. And as you breathe in, brighten that pleasant feeling, like slowly turning up a dimmer switch. As you breathe out, intensify the pleasant feeling. As if each in-breath, each inhalation is ratcheting up the pleasure in the body. Each out-breath, ratcheting up the pleasure in the body. Again, like inflating a tire. With each push, it gets a little bit more full, a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. So building up this electric intensity of euphoria with each in-breath and out-breath. You might notice that this electric euphoria is accompanied by a subtle bliss, more subtle, peaceful feeling of happiness and pleasure. So as you inhale, brighten, intensify, build up that more subtle feeling of bliss. And as you exhale, magnify that subtle feeling of bliss. And each inhalation is pumping up the bliss. Each exhalation is pumping up the bliss. Breathing in and out, pumping up, magnifying, intensifying, feeling of bliss. And the mind pervades the whole body. So as you breathe in, experience the mental activities, experience the movements of mind. Bringing awareness to all the currents, the ripples of the mind. And as you inhale, settle down the movements of the mind. As you exhale, settle down the movements of the mind. As you inhale, bring stillness and peace to the mind. As you exhale, bring stillness and peace to the mind. As you inhale, tranquilize all the mental activities. As you exhale, tranquilize all the mental activities. Inhaling, bringing body and mind to complete stillness. Exhaling, bringing body and mind to complete stillness. So you can stretch a little bit. That was nice. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Not yet, but if you have any questions for Bante, now it's the right time to send them in the live chat so he can answer to them. In the meanwhile, say hello to Ella, Michele, or Michelle, actually, Andrew, Claudia, Judy, Marielle, Preeti, hello, Derek, hello, Kevin. So great that you're always here with us, morning and evening.
We've got quite a number of repeat visitors, it looks like.
Yeah, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah, so much appreciation, much admiration to those of you who have been signing in every time or pretty much every time. I really respect your dedication. It's really, really admirable.
Yeah, very inspiring. And Sarah as well says hello. And Claudia has a question. She asks, how does cultivating these positive feelings offer from attachment? Sorry, how does cultivating these positive feelings differ from attachment or striving?
So striving is not a bad thing. Striving is something that the Buddha encourages and praises. So putting forth a genuine, diligent, ongoing effort in our practice is something which helps us make progress much more quickly. As for attachment, so in order to cultivate a higher mind which is capable of attaining liberation, it is necessary to cultivate wholesome mind states. It's necessary to develop the wholesome mind states, which are the foundation for a liberated mind. So developing wholesome mind states, developing pleasant states of body and mind is not necessarily the product of attachment. If we're doing it as a stepping stone to higher wisdom, as a stepping stone to letting go, as a stepping stone to uh, seeing things as they really are, as a way of stabilizing and brightening the mind so that it's capable of deep insight, then there's no attachment, because we're also cultivating these states of body and mind, knowing that they are temporary, knowing that they are impermanent, and knowing that they are not the final goal, that they're just a stepping stone along the way. So with that knowing, as we practice them, we are practicing them without developing attachment to them. But actually, if you do develop some attachment to the pleasantness, the pleasure, the serenity, the happiness of samadhi, well, that's great. That's good. That means you're more likely to meditate. Yeah, I don't say anything wrong with that. So some people say that samadhi is dangerous because you can get attached to it. I say that samadhi is not dangerous because you can get attached to it. It's great to get attached to samadhi, because then you'll meditate a lot. And that means your samadhi will get better, which means that you're more capable of cultivating deep insight, which will help you let go of your attachment to samadhi right away. So you don't need to worry about getting attached to the pleasantness and serenity of body and mind that come through practicing samadhi. No problem. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. And Jans says, thank you for the teaching. It helps to go through each step. I agree. And Mehmet asks, thank you very much. Is it okay to control inhaling and exhaling during experiencing piti to intensify it?
So I have two answers to that. So one answer is to say that, generally speaking, the encouragement is to not control your breathing while doing mindfulness of breathing, but just to be aware of it. The other answer is do whatever works. So if it helps, then it helps. So you need to evaluate for yourself. The main problem that usually comes with forceful or controlled breathing is that tends to agitate the mind. It tends to bring a certain degree of unsettledness, intention to body and mind. So for that reason, it's not normally recommended. So you do need to be careful if you're doing any kind of controlled or forceful breathing, because that does tend to bring tension and agitation to body and mind. So it's not recommended, but if it helps, well, then it helps. But watch what happens. Make sure that you're not building up tension and agitation as you do that.
There's not a question here, but I was wondering this, because if I remember correctly, in Ajahn Buddhadasa's book of mindfulness of breathing, he does recommend controlling your breath at the beginning, like when you start meditating, just to become acquainted, I think, with the movements of the breathing, of the breath. And then afterwards, obviously, once you, because it's something so subtle, so after then you're acquainted with the breath, to just let it do its own thing. Do you have anything to say about that? It's something that you recommend or not?
That's something that a lot of teachers do recommend, is at the very beginning of the meditation practice to start by actively doing some actually quite heavy, intense, forceful breathing as a way of really making sure that you're paying full attention to the breathing process. So I touched on that lightly at the beginning of the meditation guidance. I spoke about taking 2 or 3 long, slow, deep breaths. And actually, that's an instruction that I very commonly give at the start of any meditation method, because it helps to calm down the mind a little bit. So it's very helpful for establishing like a basic surface level calmness in the mind before moving on to any other method. But for mindfulness of breathing, yes, there's some teachers who recommend in the very beginning, so like the first minute or two maybe, to intentionally do some intense, forceful breathing as a way of making sure your attention is firmly focused on the breathing process. So that's fine. If it helps, it helps. But don't do it for very long. Again, maximum of maybe 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes. A few seconds even is usually plenty. And then once your mind is well focused on the breathing, then let the breath be what it is. So one thing which can happen when doing breath meditation is that the breath can become increasingly subtle and refined, to the point where it can seem to disappear completely. Don't worry about it if that happens. Just keep practicing mindfulness of the body. And don't worry about it if the breath seems to be completely gone. As long as your mindfulness is very sharp and clear, then there's nothing to worry about. But sometimes the breath disappears because we're not paying attention, because the mind gets dull or hazy or unclear. And then the breath is not apparent just because we're not paying enough attention. So if that's the case, then intentionally breathing a little bit harder for a short period of time can be a way of helping get us back into the mode of paying attention to the breathing process. So again, that's okay, but recognize that it's a very heavy-handed approach, which is only really useful when the mind is really coarse or out of control. As your meditation practice develops, then that kind of heavy-handed, forceful method becomes counterproductive. So use it judiciously. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you, Bhante. Yes,
Yeah.
Mehmet has another question. He says, thank you. At the beginning of detailed explanation of Buddha, as I understand, parimukkham is translated differently. Some translate it as the front body, some as around the mouth, pointing the area between the mouth and the nose. What do you think about it?
Well, first off, I'm just looking at the Pali text here. So parimukha, the Buddha uses it in a number of places where it has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with mindfulness of breathing, and absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with one's mouth or one's face. So I personally don't believe that parimukha literally means to focus on your mouth. I don't think that's what the Buddha is talking about here. So parimukha literally means in front of, and that's the way it's more commonly used. So then one way that it's translated in the context of establishing mindfulness is establishing mindfulness as foremost. So making mindfulness your priority. So then taking parimukha as meaning priority, making mindfulness your priority, which to me makes a lot more sense because the Buddha uses the word parimukha in a lot of different contexts, which don't have anything whatsoever to do with breathing or with your mouth or with focusing on your face or anything like that. So I think that parimukha means more priority, making mindfulness your priority. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. We don't have any more questions unless something appears last minute. So we will be doing the second part of this sutta. We will be studying it tomorrow, and the format will be the same. So Bhante will explain the steps, and then he will guide us through them. So tune in tomorrow again at 8 a.m. And as usual, every day of the week, we'll have 8 a.m. Sutta study and 7:30 p.m. guided meditation followed by words of Dhamma. So I hope to see you all this evening, tomorrow evening, um, day after tomorrow morning, the day after tomorrow evening, and so far and so forth. All
For
right.
eternity until we attain awakening.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh, John also appeared. Hi, John. Bye, John. Bye, everyone. See you soon.